The global tourism sector is navigating a fragile path, facing significant challenges amid global conflicts and economic uncertainty. The ongoing war in Palestine, now Lebanon, as well as the conflict between Russia and Ukraine, have raised concerns about regional stability and caused disruptions in international aviation. Additionally, inflation and economic contraction in major tourism source countries have reduced demand in international travel, all casting uncertainty over the future of the industry. Egypt, a major tourism destination, is facing challenges like many others, but also holds promising opportunities, especially with the near completion of the Grand Egyptian Museum, said to be the largest pharaonic museum in the world.
Good morning, everybody. It's a pleasure to be with you here in this important session about global tourism in crisis, navigating conflict, economic uncertainty, and the future of international travel. Now, for non-Egyptians, let me tell you to start with how Egyptians look at the tourism sector. The tourism sector in Egypt is always looked as the sector that will save Egypt from all the different types of crises that can happen. We do believe we have a comparative advantage, and we do have a comparative advantage on all fronts of and types of tourism, whether it's cultural, whether it's beach, whether it's health type of tourism, whether you name it. Yet, we're unable to fulfill the untapped potential that this country has. Several reasons have been said. Several governments have tried, but still the potential remains untapped. It's always a vibrant sector or industry, yet it's the most vulnerable one. Any kind of terrorism, not necessarily even in Egypt, affects the sector, yet it remains very vulnerable. That's on the demand side. On the supply side, despite the fact, as I said, we have a lot of aspects that make Egypt one of the top destinations, still we have a lot of supply side constraints, and that's what we're going to hear in this session. Do they really affect the sector, or let's call it the industry, or not? Let me add that we have Mr. Tuckett, who is a tourism expert from the UK. He's with us on Zoom. Well, actually, the video, it seems, is just talking about what's going on regarding the guiding questions. And let me say that the guiding questions are dealing with what's happening in the international tourism industry regarding what's happening all over the world, whether we're talking about what's happening in the region or in Ukraine, Russian, and the other type of tensions happening a lot all over the world, and how this is affecting the global industry and the supply chain and the main destinations and the shifts that are happening. Adding to that, the issue of global inflation and whether this is affecting the tourism plans and the tourism bundles that are happening and the tourism tastes of the different tourists and how this is affecting Egypt in specific. And then moving to the supply side, we have a lot of issues to deal with, whether we're talking about the airports or the rail networks, and what we're seeing in Egypt in terms of development of such type of infrastructure. Yet, the infrastructure we have whenever we talk about tourism is still very modest, humble. Adding to that, the institutions and the entanglement of different jurisdictions, of different authorities and ministers dealing with tourism. And then we move to the type of prescription, how the diversity, Egypt make use of diversity in different types of tourism, bundling together culture with beach and so on and so forth. Adding the aspect of sustainability, the move all over the world regarding climate change and adaptability and sustainability. Where is Egypt performing and where does Egypt rank in this regard? And finally, what kind of lessons we can learn, and did we overcome the post-COVID syndrome, or we're still living in the aftermath of this major crisis that affected the whole world and specifically Egypt regarding tourism? So let us start by our speaker from the UK to give us an overview of the global tourism industry and what's happening and whether such trends we talked about, inflation, climate change, and so on, how they are affecting the situation. The floor is yours. You can start, and we have 10 minutes. You have maximum of 10 minutes, so we have more than one round.
Good morning. Good morning. Thank you for that. First of all, thank you very much for inviting me to share my opinion and views on what we're experiencing in our association, which is predominantly in the MICE industry, which is the corporate travel side of things. But in summary of some of your questions, what we experienced immediately after COVID in 23 and 24 was what was termed revenge travel. There was a desire to reconnect, to travel, to experience the globe after being in lockdown for, 2-3 years during COVID. We're starting to see that peak is flatlining a little bit. It's starting to come back into what we would consider more normalcy. But what we experienced pretty much globally around the world during 23 and 24 was massive supply chain constraints. So hotels had laid off huge amounts of people during the pandemic, as had travel agencies and the whole supply chain. And what that resulted in with this boom in travel and constricted supply chain resulted in a reduction of service levels, and some really difficult situations in the supply chain, especially on the hotel side and venue side. That seems to have normalized somewhat, although skills shortage in our industry is a massive concern. There is a serious constraint in lack of training in the hospitality industry, in the travel industry. Many people, young entrants into the industry, do not perceive the industry as exciting or secure, and it's very deadline driven and very stressful. So we find it very difficult to attract new talent into the industry. So I would say that is one of our biggest challenges. Regarding the demand, travel is booming like never before, obviously dependent in different areas of the world. We are affected by the conflicts and ongoing conflicts in certain regions, but Europe, the US, South America all seem to have a very healthy appetite for travel across all sectors, whether that be the leisure, the touring, or the MICE sectors. I've just returned from the US, from one of the largest trade shows, IMEX America, and there is no doubt that demand is there. We were concerned that there would be a delay or that there would be a wait and see attitude for the upcoming American elections. But the fact of the matter, what we experienced on the ground was that there was a very healthy appetite for travel from American corporate companies and third-party agents to travel around the world. Due to the increase in demand last year, we've seen a trend moving towards second-tier cities. So some of our traditional capitals in Europe, like Rome and Barcelona, have fallen off the radar, with clients looking for more authentic experiences and looking for second and third-tier cities. One of the trends that we see coming through from a younger millennial traveler is that they are looking for an authentic or real experience, as we would call it. So they are looking to immerse themselves into the culture and the destinations of the destination. Finally, regarding sustainability, this is a big challenge in our industry. Unfortunately, tourism, and especially the MICE industry, is not by its nature a sustainable industry. Flying 100 or 200 people across the world for an incentive trip is hard to justify. However, having said that, there needs to be change. Sustainability is high on the agenda for many corporate companies. They are looking at sustainability and the impact of sustainability on their travel programs. And I think what that will result in is a regionalization of travel plans. So especially in Europe, we are seeing trains rather than planes. Travel distances are shortened. And we will most probably continue to see more of that regionalization. So corporate companies will most probably be looking to travel to their nearby neighbors rather than across the world. And this has been backed up by some of the American Express global travel research that they have been doing, that is indicating a small reduction in long-haul airfares going forward, and an increase in local and regional travel. So sustainability needs to be addressed. The tourism industry has a lot of work to do, and it's not just about greenwashing or event greenwashing, as they call it. There needs to be significant change in the industry towards a more sustainable future and making travel more sustainable. But we're also seeing that the demand for travel is huge. It remains very buoyant, considering all of the impacts that we're seeing around the world. Certain markets are very, very resilient, such as the South American market is very resilient. We're seeing big numbers coming out of Brazil, Argentina, and Mexico across the world. The US seems and appears to be buoyant and moving forward next year. And this morning in the UK, we've received some surprising inflation data. Inflation is down from what the projected number was. They were expecting 2%. It was announced this morning at 1.7. So we are seeing some good financial highlights and some good economic indicators for the future. So all in all, my experience, or what we're experiencing at the moment, is quite positive.
That's a very good start for a global perspective. And actually, when I'm trying to translate this into the Egyptian situation, I don't see it fitting. So let's move from the global perspective that we've seen. It's rather very optimistic to the gloomliness of the Egyptian situation with the geopolitical tension and other aspects. So let me start by Mr. Ilhami Zayat, whom I'll address to him some of the main aspects, being one of the pioneers of this industry. There is always this debate that the Egyptian supply side is not up to the standards, whether we're talking about the number of hotel rooms or whether we're talking about other types of infrastructure, whether it's airports or readiness of the airline industry and so on and so forth. So I would like to pick up your mind on issues associated with other aspects. I mean, we're still talking about the humble situation of the Cairo airport and the logistical stuffs that we're unable to deal with. And yet we see the airports and other destinations becoming a destination by itself to enjoy the leisure, to enjoy the facilities, to enjoy the technology, whether we're talking about countries in the region or we're talking about the Far East. So what do you think about the future of airports, and how do we measure the gap between what's happening here in Egypt, especially with the announcement of the Prime Minister regarding the involvement of the private sector in managing some of the airports? How do you see this? And how do you perceive where we're going in this regard, the supply side aspects and other aspects related to the airline industry and so on?
I will start by a positive note. I agree with our colleague that IMEX was very good for us, for Egypt, and very few people expected. I don't want the bad eye to come look for me. I'm safe, I hope. We have experienced a very good IMEX show in Las Vegas. And one of my colleagues, who is the president of SITE, the Society of Incentive Travel Executives, was there. And we have very, very promising, I said very promising, for 2025. Hope nothing happens between now and then, and the whole thing will calm down. Now, coming back to the airport situation in Egypt. Of course, people now look at airport as an experience. They don't look at airport just to go to an airport for transit or for things like this. They want to have an experience, like every aspect of travel, whether the airline, whether the travel agents, whether the hotel. The people have changed attitudes. Unfortunately, here, our airports are not good for this. It's a big mess. Why? Because, of course, we closed one airport. We have 3 terminals. We closed Terminal 1, and we are working with 2 and 3. And we don't have a fixed date as to when it will open. And we don't have the amenities people are expecting in airports. If you go now to all modern airports, you'll find people can have dining experience. They can have relaxation experience. They can have massage at the airport. They can have haircuts, sauna, etc. And maybe the first airport to have this was Denmark. I still remember 40 years or 35 years ago, they had this kind of thing. But if you go to Singapore airport, to Qantas in Australia, all airports now have this kind of facilities. So this is one thing we should have. Second thing is the on-time performance of the airline, because the airline is related to the airport. The airline is delayed, and people have no experience at the airport. It will be a dreadful experience for the destination, and it can kill everything else. Thirdly, the staffing. Across the board, in all the travel business, we have a problem of staffing. Where do we get staff from? You are not anymore an attractive business. People don't want to work in travel or related business. The airlines are suffering the same thing. The airline, they find no staff because they laid off a lot of staff during COVID, and they can't recruit fast enough to cope with the demand or with the number of aircrafts they have. And if you go to Paris, you will see a lot of Air France airplanes lying on the ground. I'm not speaking about sales, I'm speaking about even handling of the clients. So we have very, very serious problems at the airport. Cleanliness. Cleanliness is a major point. People are caring about sanitary problem. They want clean airports. At one point we had in 2005, we had Fraport managing Cairo airport and Paris airports managing all other airports. And all of a sudden, we said, we don't want them, we can do everything ourselves after 25th of January. And this is not true. Not for any reason, but people respect more a foreigner when he gives order than respect a colleague from Egypt. That's one. Number two, overstaffing. All of a sudden, we had a lot of people we had to employ past 2013. So all this problem added together, plus the fact that we don't have the amenities, are creating a problem. So we should look into it more seriously.
Thank you, Mr. Zayed, for pinpointing some of the major constraints we have as at the gate of tourism. I mean, whenever we go to any country, we always start to let's say, have a feeling of the airport and the logistics there, what kind of expectations we have. So this is an issue that I believe the government is working on. And let me move to a positive note, as Mr. Elhami said, in 2022-23, the fiscal year, we reached the peak regarding the number of tourists coming to Egypt, 14.7 million, as well as the revenue, 13.2 billion US dollars. We might agree or disagree on the definition of a tourist and so on and so forth. But today we experience the soft opening of the Grand Egyptian Museum, waiting for the official opening to happen soon. Let's keep the fingers crossed. Nothing happens in the region to stop this type of good and wishful thinking. And we have Tariq Tawfiq, who actually was among the first people who dealt with this great project, being a director general of this project for a number of years. That was, I believe, we met in 2017 or something like this. So started 14 and you were there till 17 or 18, 19. So 5 years of dealing with this greatest project. My question to you, do you believe that the opening of the Grand Egyptian Museum will affect, given the circumstances we're in and the soft opening we're having, the flow of tourists, taking into account the geopolitical situation, taking into account the sudden announcement? Because again, as Mr. Elhami will tell us, the tour operators did not include it in the program yet. So it will be an optional issue and not a main issue. What do we expect of opening up the gem, given the constraints we're having? And whether will this act as a driving force for overcoming the logistical aspects and the airports and or not? Floor is yours.
The ever-changing, explosive situation around us in the region, Palestine, Lebanon, has, of course, affected us. But there are negative effects, there are positive aspects, and there are even opportunities. If we take the Grand Egyptian Museum as an example, the Grand Egyptian Museum has been a project that has been awaited with anticipation by the world for a long time now. And certain points and certain dates had been considered for the opening of this museum, but again, for changes in the geopolitical environment were not realized. And now this opening that's happening for 12 galleries of the Grand Egyptian Museum, to make them accessible to international and national visitors, comes at a difficult moment, because, of course, we need to consider the humanitarian tragedy happening in Palestine and Lebanon, which prevent us from having a huge celebration to inaugurate these galleries. On the other hand, these galleries now are ready, and they need to be made accessible in order for the world to keep its credibility towards us, that we are credible in this big project. Will it affect the flow of tourists? It will, because here comes now the positive aspect. If we consider the negative aspect that we didn't have a big opening for these galleries, let's consider the positive aspect that we witness right now. Although the situation around us from all sides is quite explosive, that the tourists from around the world, and I'm not talking about even the companies, I'm talking about the individuals themselves, consider Egypt as a safe destination. And the numbers of tourists coming to Egypt are even rising this year, higher than the number that you have mentioned for 2023, which is a positive note. And opening these galleries now will help to show that we ourselves in Egypt are considering the situation to be safe and inviting, and we're working on the increase of tourism. And once this opening starts to have its echo around the world, it will affect for the next season the tourism flow to Egypt. Maybe the problem was that and this is a general problem we have in Egypt actually, we tend to announce big events too late. We must put into consideration that in general, when we have a big event, we have to announce it a year or at least 6 months in advance in order to have the maximum revenue out of it. Now we would actually have to wait a little until we have the positive revenue. There will be an increase in numbers. There will be an increase in revenue. It is a chance for the Grand Egyptian Museum to start monitoring how the flow inside the museum should be, how the pricing has to be adjusted. All of these are very positive aspects. Concerning opportunities, to come to the last point, there are a lot of cities around the world, especially in Europe, where there started to be a kind of public revolt against mass tourism. And this will have some of the tourists in the future go towards our region. There are new competitors on the market, Saudi Arabia making a lot of effort, providing something that Mr. Elhami pointed at, high service. This is something that we in Egypt will have to work on, but this will help, if we do it the right way, for us to take a share of the tourism that will be driven away from Europe because of many reasons: hostility from the local population, raising in prices, This is a big opportunity for us. Museums, big projects like the Grand Egyptian Museum, having the Sphinx Airport only 40 minutes away, with a good management of charter flights, could be a huge opportunity.
Thank you. Thank you, Tarek. I'll get back to you on some of the issues, but let us move to Haytham and focus on the hospitality and the hotels industry. Haytham, you're part of a global chain, the Hilton. In one of you're general manager of one of the new projects of Hilton in Egypt that we're still excited about its opening, and it's because it's located in Cairo. And I would like to ask you several aspects, whether the issues of whether the things that Mr. Ilhami mentioned regarding the change, the sustainability aspects, the green aspects, the reservation of environment aspects, the health and safety aspects, how they are included in the chain, and that's number one. Number two, the issue of Cairo is moving to be a city break, as they call it, and a lot of exciting destinations in Cairo are being there. Not only the gem, the Nemek, but as well the Fatimist Cairo and old Cairo, and what's happening in Darb el-Labbana and so on and so forth. How do we perceive the capacity of hotels in Cairo, especially that they are focused on one type of, let's say, nationalities? They are not made up to meet the demands of others.
Correct.
How do we perceive this as well, given all what has been said?
Thank you very much. I'll pick up from my colleagues and my professor Ilhami and Dr. Tariq said. Looking at our current status today, again, we are on a very positive note. Egypt has been forever resilient, considering what's happening around us. And if we today look at the geopolitical, it is impacting us, yet we were very resilient and people insisted to come and visit the country in its all aspects. So whether in the Red Sea, Upper Egypt, Cairo, and so on and so forth. But before I tell you about the hotels in Cairo and the capacity, in my opinion, I think there are very crucial points that we need to address if we are to move forward and if we are to improve our share from the competition happening around us. And they basically lie in culture and perception, so we can counter the hostility in the streets and how people and the new generation would perceive a tourist visiting Egypt. I think we have a big role to play yet, introducing the importance of a tourism in Egypt and a tourist in Egypt. What is this? What's in it for me? Me as the individual living in a village in Aswan or in any of the places in Upper Egypt. We as a country, we need to promote the value of such industry to all the population. That's very important. Coupled with the education and training, and Hugh mentioned this as well as Mr. Ilhami. I think over the past 6 years, we've lost about 35% of our skilled worker to either neighboring countries or to other industries. And the reason, because we could not sustain a decent income. So these people can afford a decent living, similar to other industries or similar to other countries. And that's a big subject that we can tap on and discuss for a very long time. Going back to your main question about the hotels in Cairo, I think Cairo has about 22,000 rooms altogether. When we heard that Dubai is to open 120,000 rooms before their biggest event. So Cairo only has 22,000 rooms. We are short of hotels, and we are short of diverse products that we can provide to the market. I think we're coming from an era where we say we need to have 5 stars hotels. There is nothing wrong of having 3 stars and 4 stars, but providing the right product. And as you said, I may be lucky coming from a multinational company that understands the different types of products that we can offer to the market. We have about 24 brands. Yet in Egypt, we only know maybe 2 and probably 3 coming. So as the other multinational hotel chains, we need to make this accessible, and we need to make this realized by everyone, by the public, so we can serve and cater to every different segment that comes to Cairo. We are short of luxury property in Cairo. We are short of what we call the focus service. Focus service is hotels that can cater for a corporate person that is coming to Cairo. They need to have good internet, breakfast, that's it, and a clean room, obviously. They don't need to have all the rest of the facilities that are within the luxury properties, and so on and so forth. So this is what we are short of. And we're short of having hotels in, not only in Cairo, but in other destinations within the country as well. This is what we need to perhaps focus on, but before tapping on that, we need to think of who will serve within these properties, because we need to look at our education system when it comes to tourism, and we need to upgrade this. The world have moved far surpassed us when it comes to education. And if we can tap on this, we can yield a lot on what comes to Egypt. And instead of making 13 billion from 14.7 million tourism, I think we can rocket this number to perhaps over 20 with this number. So it's yielding on what you have. This will come through proper services and proper hardware that we can present.
Thank you, Haitham. Let's have another round, and then we open the floor for discussion. So I'll be very specific now on some of the issues. Mr. Tackett, I have 3 questions in light of what you said and other speakers said. Can you easily sell Egypt as a safe haven in the region, given the geopolitical circumstances? I'm talking here as a tour operator outside Egypt, talking from a corporate perspective, number 1. Number 2, is it flexible enough to change the regional bundlings? We had regional bundling with Jordan, for example. Now we need to change and go to Saudis or Turks and have some kind of regional. Is this feasible in the short time? And third issue is related to the devaluation that Egypt has. Does still low prices play a greater role for international traveler, given the fact that the trends are changing from groups to individual travelers, or they look for value for money regardless of the pricing? The floor is yours.
Thank you. For your first question, can we sell Egypt as a standalone destination? Yes, most definitely. Egypt, as my colleagues alluded to, has always been a resilient destination. I believe that the fundamentals, and this is the same for any country or tourism operation, as long as the fundamentals are there, then I believe any destination is viable. And when I talk about the fundamentals, does it offer value for money? There is a big focus on authenticity and experience. And I believe that the new museum in Cairo is just an exciting, massive opportunity for Egypt to promote itself to the world. I believe you are perceived as a safe destination. However, that said, I think that is very market specific. Some markets are more sensitive than others. We've seen this in other destinations around the world. For example, Egypt is not unique in its situation with its regional neighbors. We are seeing a similar effect in, for example, the Baltic states and Poland in their relation to Ukraine and Russia and what is happening in that part of the world. Yet the Baltic states and Poland have seen strong resilience come back, especially in the leisure market. But it depends on the markets that you're targeting. For example, the US market, as we all know, is quite fragile, mainly because of their worldview and the travelers' knowledge, and also their history and destinations of travel. But as I alluded to earlier, I find that the South American markets are extremely resilient. The South African market is another market that is extremely resilient, and offers huge opportunities. So can Egypt be sold on its own, and can we sell Egypt? Yes, most definitely. It's all just, a lot of it boils down to communication. This is where we rely on tourism boards and convention bureaus and destination marketing organizations to do their bit to promote the destination with what we call social proof or proof. So that is using social media, that's using advertising, that's displaying what's actually happening in your country at a specific time, so that people can see what is happening and what is going on in real time. With the generation that we have at the moment, there are so many outlets to convey that message across. Regarding the opportunity to unbundle yourself from a destination such as Jordan, yes, Saudi Arabia is definitely creating a huge noise in the tourism world. They obviously are throwing a lot at it, and aligning and partnering up. However, in my personal opinion, I believe, whilst it's beneficial to bundle a region, I do believe that Egypt is strong enough and has sufficient product offering and excitement and experiences to stand alone, and doesn't necessarily have to be bundled with other countries in the area. And finally, in relation to your question about price and budget and cost effectiveness, yes. I mean, I think that value is difficult to find in the travel world at the moment. We've seen airlines such as Emirates post record profits. A lot of the supply chain has used 23 and 24 to regain a lot of money back from what they invested or lost during COVID, and are now looking to reinvest that. But the margins have to come down. We're seeing hotel rates in traditional cities like Barcelona and Rome and London that we have never seen before, and that's simply unsustainable. And that's creating a shift in the market, where a lot of people were staying in 5-star hotels can now not afford to do so and are looking at the next level. And my colleague is so correct from Hilton there. There is nothing wrong with a good quality 4-star hotel. In fact, in certain markets, especially the MICE market and the incentive travel market, that overt luxury might almost be frowned upon. It's nice to have for the upper segments, but for the corporate market, there are more and more controls and more eyes looking on corporate companies and how they spend their travel budget. So providing a really good, strong 4-star product is very, very important. Price will always be a determinator. Budgets are tough. But it boils down to value. I think as long as the value is there, what people are happy to pay for is if they feel that they've received value for money and that they're not being ripped off. I think what turns the traveler off, and I think what turns travelers away, is when they are paying over the odds or significantly higher rates, than what they feel that they're getting value for. So as long as going back to the fundamentals are there, if you get a good room, a good experience, a good service level for a reasonable price, then I believe any destination can be successful.
Thank you. Moving to Mr. Zayed. 2 questions. Now, this industry, I would say, has been the most affected industry or sector in Egypt regarding the crisis. The extent of vulnerability is extremely high. Thanks God, we were able to deal with the latest geopolitical situation in a very prudent way, and we were able to overcome, and we did more than what was expected in terms of downturn. We overdid it, and we did very good numbers. 2 questions. First of all, is related to where is the bottleneck in the supply chain in this industry, as you perceive it, being in the industry for a long while. The second is tourism promotion in Egypt. There are 2 schools. One that says that we should have a B2B type of promotion, and that what works better, giving incentives for the airline industry, the tour operators outside, and so on. Yet, the trend is moving to individual travel. And hence, there is another school that says we should be B2C, not B2B. What's your perspective on this?
I got a bit lost on what was the first question?
The most binding bottleneck in the supply chain of this industry.
Airports. That's number one, because this is the arrival. And when some of my colleagues spoke about Sphinx airports, I would call it the disaster airport. I always like to be shocking. Why?
Started being positive and you've changed now. So
why? Because when you arrive there, it's a perfect airport, very modern, beautiful. But how will you get out of the airport? You need a car. You need any means of transportation. Forget it. If you want a car, a taxi, you will pay a bundle of money if he comes. So how would you get out? Unless somebody is waiting for you. I represent a few airlines that land there. And the second thing, they don't promote it as part of Cairo. We have a big issue with the civil aviation. They say Sphinx Airport. Who knows where is Sphinx? We beg them to say Cairo Sphinx. No. So people see Sphinx. They say, we don't use it. We don't go. And I have carriers. They stopped their flights. The second largest German carrier, which we represent, stopped their flights because the guests could not find this airport. So we have to cope with this issue. We have to watch, see, and look at really the main problems. That's concerning this issue, and I don't want to expand then I can take. B2B, okay. Now, we neither have a valid B2B or a valid B2C. Our promotion is simply haphazard. We don't do anything with a definite study. Not only whom do I want to address, but how do I want to address it? Exactly 3 days ago, we received the information that the partial opening of the Grand Museum. Do you think I have time to convince a guy in Paris, which is a close destination, to come and visit this museum? So he will only get whoever is in Cairo and has a free time, but he will not get an added client. And that's what we need. I had my differences with Haitham because he said, promote new destination. I said, let's promote the old destination first and then promote new destination. Because everybody is speaking about China. I said, what are you going to get from China? I will favor 100% go to China. But we have no airlines flying to China. We had a guy a few years back who broke all the rules, by offering a trip which was worth $2,200 for $750. And the Chinese bought it because it was cheap. That this guy went bankrupt. And I don't want to mention the name of the airline he has, but all of it went bust because it was not the right promotion. So when we go back to B2B or B2C, I say we have to study very well. And for the time being, we cannot go B2C. We have to go B2B except for general announcement. And every company is trying to do its own promotion on the media, social media. And this could be B2B. This is a must to start with. And the receiving end, he knows better his destination. So he knows better how to get to his C. So I leave it to him. But I will just address him for the time being. So
thank you. Moving to Tariq. He smiled a sarcastic smile when it came to pricing of the ticket of the Grand Egyptian Museum. And pricing is always an issue. So I didn't get it. This sarcastic smile is related to Egyptians or foreigners. That's number one. Number two is the issue of the gem opening. Do you believe it's a value added to other cultural sites, or it will just take the traffic from here to there? The idea, the implications on tourism is increasing the number of nights spent in Cairo. Do you believe that we will reach this, given the constraint of the number of hotels, rooms, or it will extend the stay and hence the payoff from tourism?
The tourists have certain, in Germany they called it Schmerzgrenzen, which means a point where they don't want to go beyond when it gets to tickets. So for a moment, the ticket, for instance, for the Grand Egyptian Museum was announced for a few hours for £1,700 for a foreigner, which would be more than $30. A few hours later, it was revised to 1,200 Egyptian pounds.
No, it is a media aspect. This has to do with a guided tour versus non-guided tour. So
yes,
let me clarify.
But it was first perceived as if the price would be over $30. So over $30 for many is too much. And the Louvre, for instance, had an experience a few years ago. They were at about 17 euros. Then they thought they had reached 9 million visitors a year. So they said, okay, we go up to 23. And within 1 year, the number dropped again, 1 million visitors. So they returned again to 17 euros and providing side offers, what Haitham was talking about, providing more service to get more money out of the visitor. The point is, the Grand Egyptian Museum is so big that it will affect the tourism programs of Egypt. For starters, it will, for instance, take away some of the visitors of the museum at the Tahrir Square, because you will have a new touristic day, which is the pyramids and the Grand Egyptian Museum. This will change the traditional programs, which was the pyramids and the Citadel, for instance, or the pyramids and Saqqara. So there is a change happening. Does it add? Yes, it will eventually add, because we will have to work on our programs that we provide. So I can provide for you a program about ancient Egypt. I can provide a program about the whole of Egypt. There must be a diversity in the products that we provide. For a long time, we have the companies and everything have held on to the classic program. This has to change. This has to change because we just have too much to offer nowadays. The other point is that I agree totally with Haytham and with Ilhami that our current view that we need to have only high-end accommodation and luxury, this is not anymore conform to the time that we're in, because we used to be a more than affordable destination. But we have done some changes, especially in the pricing of our hotels, that has made us not so affordable anymore. So in order to compensate this, we need now to have also 4 stars, 3 stars, 2 stars hotels, especially as, and this also has to do with the Grand Egyptian Museum and the NEMEC. In both of these huge projects, we have conference halls. So you are ready to have conferences. Not all the people attending conferences, especially if they are scientific, have the financial means to stay at a 5-star hotel for a week. So we have to provide the other options. The Grand Egyptian Museum, the surroundings of the Grand Egyptian Museums, now one of the big companies, without saying the name, has announced that it will build there around 5,000 new rooms. 5,000 new rooms is nothing. Actually, all big chains have to start using the surroundings of the Grand Egyptian Museum to have there more rooms, in order also to be able to cater such a conference hall that is at the Grand Egyptian Museum. So it's not anymore only culture, but it's culture, business, leisure. It's the way you market it. It's the way you are able to provide the high-end service that and the pricing, the competitive pricing that will get the people to you.
Thank you, Tara. And I'm glad that you didn't say that the traffic will go away from NEMEC. You mentioned only Tahrir Museum. So you're safe now. Finally, moving to Haytham. And what's your view? What I see all over the world is that people are moving to getting away from globalization, main chains, and going to authenticity. Do you believe that Egypt is able to overcome the issue, the constraint of the number of hotel rooms by having more boutique hotels, by having, I won't talk about Airbnb and so on, because this is in Egypt is still not a regulated market that you can handle, but the boutique hotels, the idea of moving away from chains, or there are different animals, people still believe in the quality, the standards of the chains, or people now are more willing to take risk given the social media and they know where the places to go, they move towards boutique hotels. And given what's happening, is it feasible in Egypt or not?
First of all, I would like to thank Dr. Abla and the organizers for having the tourism session as the number 2. I really appreciate this, and I call upon you to have more regular sessions like this, because there is a lot to be discussed in this. And in Egypt, we always say that tourism is a nationwide project. We always say this, but we don't do anything about it. We need to have a collective efforts and path that we can achieve this. And in answering your question, do you know the ratio or the percentage of the hotel chains in Egypt does not exceed 12%. So actually in Egypt, we are short of those international. Yes, it's good to move into boutique hotels and to different offerings, but we need to identify it. The wording of a boutique hotel is a small, little cute hotel that can cater for a certain service. In Egypt, we consider this as the luxury properties, which is not normally the case. So we need to open ourselves to other experiences and other brands that can come and serve our needs. Moreover, we need to maybe adapt a nationwide project whereby we have our own chain. We have seen neighboring countries creating their own chain, and they became international chains right now. We have not seen this project, although we were the first to start tourism within the Middle East. I remember we opened the first international hotel in the Middle East back in 1959. But yet we don't have a proper international or a proper hotel operating company that went beyond Egypt, where others have done so. So we need to look at the formula. And for us to do that, we need to properly look at the studies. We need to properly look how can we attract the new generation to our industry. And for that to happen, we need to look at the entire formula. How can we make our industry sexy and appealing to those generations that are talking totally different language so they can come? Back in the days when I joined the industry, the elite of the society were enrolling in the tourism and hotel industry. Now it's not the case. So we need to look at the root cause, fix it, and then work accordingly. As Tariq said, we should move away from the typical recipes that we have, and we should be able to tailor-make new recipes according to the demand. And we see what is being offered around us, so we can tap on the untapped opportunity we have. Egypt still have a lot of untapped opportunities when it comes to tourism. Where are we with the sports tourism? Where are we with the wellness tourism? Where are we with the ecotourism? There is a lot to be tapped on before we move forward and we say we need to move away from the big brands or the big scary names to our own local ones. And before I leave you, I need to leave you with a couple of notes that perhaps maybe Dr. Abla can take this and create other sessions because they are very important. How can we make our airports to become our ambassadors? And how can we showcase what we have in our country in our airports? Because this is one of the ideas where you can promote and showcase what you have. It's not only the Sphinx and the pyramids and the citadel. We have a lot. So how can we make use of our airports to do that? How can we promote, as I said, our industry to the new generation? And why is it very difficult that we can create one simple event calendar for a year to be digitalized and spread around the world so people would know that we're opening the gym on such and such date? We have an event by the pyramids on such and such date, so they can properly plan their calendar and travel accordingly. I will leave you with these three notes. Thank you.
That's for Adla, not for me. Thank you for the food of thought that you provided, Haytham and Tariq Ilhami and who. We have 4 minutes, and I'll be very strict. So if there is an urgent kind of commentary we can have. I see Muhammad raising his hand there, and Rania, and you. So 3 comments in 1 minute each. Muhammad هناك. In 1 minute يا محمد بعد إذنك.
Three quick questions. Egypt is well known as a good touristic destination. I mean, people learn about Egypt at school. So do we need this large advertising campaign that we spend internationally every year? Second question, why there is a lot of international hotel chains are leaving Egypt, especially in Sharm el-Sheikh? And third question, what is our problem with the service? Why we don't provide good service in Egypt? Is it a cultural issue or it has to do with lack of training?
Rania?
I have one question and some comments, quick ones. Yesterday I was at the Egyptian Museum in Tahrir, and one Egyptian person couldn't get in because she didn't have a credit card. It was only credit card based or visa based. I was also once at the pyramids and it was the same case. Why cash is not allowed? As if we're trying to exclude people from visiting.
Okay.
That's a question. I have some comments, quick ones. Hostility. We were talking like by the experts, we're talking about the hostility in the streets. And as Dr. Ahmed mentioned, we're also witnessing a change from group travel to individual travel. So hostility now against women in the street is a very, very important issue that has to be addressed. It's an experience of tourism. People don't only visit places. We need to change laws to have women equal citizens to men under the Egyptian law, or else hostility will continue to happen.
Last comment.
Last one, mummies. Toya and Yoya yesterday at the Egyptian Museum were just exposed. If we don't respect our own ancestry, if we don't respect our own grandparents, and if we don't honor their own wishes to get covered, and we know how much they try to cover themselves up in different coffins, sarcophagus, or whatever, they need to be covered. The bodies of our ancestors need to be covered in order to respect ourselves and gain the respect of others.
Thank you, Aaron. The last question.
What are the benefits of the establishment of hop-on, hop-off bus like in Europe and the Far East? Also, the self-check-in and out serviced apartment hotel. Now it's expanded, globally expanded.
Okay. And finally, the last comment here. Yes.
My name is David Nyai from South Africa. Thank you once again for good comment. I think when we talk about tourism, we tend to measure it through the lenses of your Western world, that even the development that have been made, that the typical tourists is mainly a white person from the West. I think that thinking needs to change, because if we see with the changes happening at a global level, there are other tourists that are becoming more important. Yeah. They have more money. Not only do they come and just look at pyramids, they will buy more local products. Absolutely. So there are those who fly in, I'm from South Africa, those who just fly in and see animals and they fly out. While we're now seeing tourists who come and you look at the bags when they leave, they buy lots and lots of local products. So I think there's that need to change the orientation, the thinking much more deeper. And lastly, to what extent Egypt cannot develop its tourism in isolation of the African continent? To what extent is your tourism working with others, whether in Kenya or South Africa? I'm glad to state my experience coming here. It was smooth because I didn't need a visa. And speaking to Egyptians in South Africa in the same flight, they also had a good experience in terms of visa, easily processed. So some of those issues are quite important. Look at softer issues, the culture, the kind of music people listen to in hotels and everywhere else. The world is changing. I think tourism need to move with the world. Thank you.
Thank you. I can answer telegraphically some of the issues. Muhammad, in terms of tourism promotion and what we spend in relative terms, we don't spend anything. So you shouldn't say this to any tourism experts in the room. They will hate you because we don't spend anything. In relative terms, we cannot compare ourselves. Rania, the issue of paying by Visa and credit cards is to overcome the fraud. That was corruption was high, and that was the decision taken. In Nemec, it's still an exception, but in other sites all over Egypt, it has to be paid to overcome fraud and corruption. Okay, go ahead, Yahis.
Chains leaving Sharm el-Sheikh and our resorts, very straightforward, and I know I get my finger burned because of that, because owners are not meeting the standards of those international chains. So the hotels will become a bad image or damaging their brand, so they basically leave. And this is to do with the ups and downs of our business. Hop in and hop out together with advertising, we need to sort out our transportation first. And if you go out of the airport and you see a line of taxi like elsewhere, then we can talk about the hop in and hop out. Otherwise, it's very dangerous. I wouldn't recommend. Advertising, you picked up advertising, right? Sorry. So, the branded apartment is a new baby coming to Egypt. It's all over the world. It is very well known and it is a very good product. We are yet to judge the experience because it's very new. A lot of companies are focusing on this, which I think is a very good thing, and it will attract a lot of family travelers to the country. And I encourage it. Thank you.
I just have a little comment on hop on, hop off. The problem in Egypt is that unlike other cities in Europe, for instance, the destinations are quite far away from each other. And our summer, like this summer, for instance, is quite long. So if you're sitting at the top without a ceiling for 45 minutes to reach your next destination, this will not be very successful. So maybe we need something like this, but it has to be adapted to Egypt, and then it will be upon a very clever operator to make it work.
The last final issue, in Egypt, we have this issue of products. We have a new company and a factory called Ghoneim, which sells replicas. And that's new because all the replicas we had were Chinese made. Now we have them Egyptian made. So you can enjoy it. And it has more than outlet and more than museum. I'm glad we did it on time. You should thank me, Habla, for this because that's not normal in the Egyptian culture. Thank you all and enjoy your lunch.